We keep our credit card limit at like 5,000, right? I mean, we had that maxed out and we had $0. So it was like we're scraping the bottom of the investment barrel. I mean, we had zero and say, I mean, everything went and we had nothing left. And it was like, dude, I don't know if we're gonna make it to launch.
Fast forward, 2 years from that first interview we did, and you're in a very different place now. I remember there was still, that bit of fear in your eyes when you're talking about your credit card. That was maxed out to where you are now. Like you seem to be everywhere. So what's happened, I guess, in the last 2 years to now? What do you say to, to an author or someone who's maybe writing their first book or they've written maybe a few?
We are being too short-sighted and we need to have bigger goals and bigger aspirations. If you want a long-term author career, then you definitely have to look at your vision, reevaluate your vision, and what is the through thread that is going to carry you all the way to the end of the line. And if all the things that come along the way as opportunities don't match that through thread, then it's not worth your time.
Hey everyone, just a quick intro here. I'm not normally going to do intros for this show, but as it's the first episode in my new format, I just wanted to take a minute to let you know that things have changed around here. You may have caught the trailer, but I have shifted from the greatest podcast in the multiverse, which I had put on hiatus just over a year ago. I decided it was time to come back, but I wanted to shift my focus from talking to authors about their books to talking about successful authors and how they have made their career work. I really wanted to dig deep on their journey, the steps that they took, the advice that they have for their former selves on how they got to where they are. So my conversations going forward are going to be talking to career authors who are either making a full-time living or who are earning enough income to be making a full-time living, whether or not they're still at their day job. So I've changed the name. This is now the Pint and Portal Author Podcast. The Pint and Portal is the pub that is featured in my book, The Greatest Pub in the Multiverse. It is a place where fantasy characters from other fantasy worlds and dimensions come together and share their stories. So I thought that this was the perfect format for authors creating their own fantasy worlds to come sit with me in the pub for an hour and share their own stories. But I wanted you to be able to sit in and listen to our conversations as I learn from them. So I hope you get some value out of it. Please follow the show. Hit like, hit subscribe wherever you are. It really helps me to reach more listeners, and it will enable me to continue to do this. If you've been looking for inspiration on how to set yourself up for author success, then you're going to love today's conversation, because I'm chatting with my good friend, Zach Diamanti. Zach, who you might know better as Z.S. Diamanti, published his first novel just over 2 years ago. And since then, he's used the tactics that you're going to hear about today, not only to be able to write full-time, but also to launch himself to an amazing level of success. I first chatted with Zach back in episode 19, which after you're done listening to this conversation, you can go back and hear how his journey has evolved. But since then, he's published 7 novels, including his runaway success, Guard in the Garden. He's been the organizer of several massive Kickstarter campaigns. He's been on stage for a countless number of author conferences and events. Plus, he's been the face of the Kindlepreneur YouTube channel. He's written articles for BookBub, for Ingram Spark, and has had his writing featured in a number of publications. I've been lucky enough to see Zach's journey evolve firsthand, and in fact, you can go back and listen to episodes 19 and 34 once you're done with this episode to see how his journey has evolved. But for today's interview, I wanted to dig deeper into Zach's journey, into the formula that he used for author success to get him from writing that very first book to where he is today. As you'll learn over the course of our conversation, it's more than just good writing. Zach talks to us about how your entire vision and the entire foundation of your author business is what sets you up for success. I'm really excited to share this conversation with you. I hope you enjoy it.
All right. Well, how are you doing, Zach? Dude, I'm doing so good. I'm so excited to be here with you for all the new and exciting stuff you got going on. Yeah, thank you so much. It's a new chapter of the podcast. It's a new name. It's a new focus, and I'm really excited because, yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this, I think. I'm excited to be here in the Pint and Portal now. We're gonna have to you're going to have like a green screen thing for us all to sit in the tavern.
That would be fantastic. That's a great idea. But I'll talk about this in the trailer a little bit when I release the trailer. But for those who maybe are tuning in for the first time, because you raised a good point, the whole idea was that I wanted an experience where, if you got to corner an author, a successful author, after a writing conference at the pub afterwards, and you got to sit down with them for an hour, what would that look like? Then what kind of questions could you ask? What would you learn? And I just thought that's what I wanted to be able to do. So I'm going to do it, and others can join us and listen in.
So you're doing it. And that's the best part about like author conferences and stuff is afterwards when we're all talking together, we go to dinner and we're, having spaghetti and just hanging out and talking about what we're actually working on and figuring out.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. And I know you're doing a lot of conferences this year, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. But I mean, the conference itself, like, the workshops and the classes, all of that, it's all great. But really the value comes from being able to sit down and chat with other authors and make those connections and learn what you can while you've got them in front of you, right? So,
yeah, 100%.
I know you know all about that. But Zach, so I thought it was funny that I was looking back at our previous interviews.
Yeah.
Because we've done a couple now. Our first interview was 2 years ago, almost to the day.
Really? Oh, you in
February. So this will go out first or second week of February. February 6th, 2022.
Yeah.
Was when our first interview launched.
Wow. That's crazy.
So you were just publishing your second book at that point in time. We talked a lot in that interview about the road you took to get to that second book. Because we're kind of launching under a new name here, and I know there's going to be a ton of listeners who have not heard that first interview. First of all, I recommend that once you're done with this interview, go back and check out that first interview. I'll make sure to link it, because the perspective, I think, is going to be very interesting to see how things have evolved from 2 years ago to now.
I might have to go back and listen myself just to see, because that's so funny to think.
It is, right? Yeah. And, we've got baby Zach and baby Herman sitting there 2 years ago trying to make this all happen. But I want to take a step back, to 2 years ago or 3 years ago, to when maybe you first had Stone and Sky published your first book. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looked like for you at that time?
Yeah. The Stone and Sky series, it was my first series, and Stone and Sky itself was my first book that I published. And I remember it came after a year-long trek where I had quit my job, and my wife said, "You got 1 year to start selling books. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to have to figure something else out." Right. And I said, okay. So I quit my job and I started chasing that dream. And at that point, I had already written Stone and Sky. It still had to go through some edits and stuff, but it was written, and she had read it at that point. And so she gave me the go ahead. She said, "Yeah, you can do this. Go for it."
Nice.
So it was.
So just sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your story there. So you had it written before you quit. Like you didn't quit and then write it. It was written.
Yeah.
And you were just going to market it at that point.
Sort of, yes. It was written, but I wasn't published yet, right? And so I was still trying to figure out how I was going to go about that. And I can tell you, I actually spent 1 week querying agents and some indie publishers. And after I probably only spent 5 days, to be honest. It was, I think I submitted exactly 6 queries, and I was like, yeah, this isn't going to work for me. This is not how I need to operate. If my wife says I only got 1 year to make this thing happen, it's going to take 3 years to get this thing published any other traditional route. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for this. I'm gonna do this the indie route, and so I did. And I built all the things that I could. I built social media. I built my website. I created reader magnets to build up a newsletter and a readers list. And built all 3 of those things. Those were kind of my 3 foundations, and set those. And by the time Stone and Sky came out, the first book came out in August of 2023. And by the time it came out, we had like $32. It was 32 or 34. I always forget the actual number, but I'm pretty sure it was $32 in the bank. And our credit card was maxed out at $5,000, right? And it was like, I hope I've done everything I could possibly do to do this right and get it ready, right? Now, mind you, what I did have was some inventory of the first book because I got some to be ready to do some sales direct and do signed copies, etc. Right? And in the first 3 months, we had gotten a book box deal and sold another 800 books right there, and was selling books directly through like the TikTok shop and the website, and I had really built a great foundation for myself. And when the book finally came out, even though those last 2 months right before it came out, it was like, I don't know. Hopefully we did everything we could. And we got 4 kids, so we got to make sure we're going to actually be able to feed everybody. And sure enough, it came out, and we got to see all the results of all that hard work for that previous year. So
yeah, right. No, unless I remember that, and I remember you telling that story for fresh out of that launch.
Yeah.
And at that point, I know that you were pretty nervous still, like that first 6 months. And I think as you were telling the story, I think I realized I think I said 2022 was 2 years ago. I meant 2024 was 2 years.
Yeah.
2022 was 2 years ago.
Oh my gosh, is it?
You were fresh. It was 2024. It was 2 years ago. But yeah, you were fresh off of that release and heading into your second book there.
Yeah, so, it was still also like up in the air and like, okay, I mean, felt like there was a lot of success there, but also it's like, okay, but like, can we keep this thing going? Can this continue to, go forward and into a book 2 and a book 3 and, 8 books later, right? 7 books and 3 more or whatever later, right after that.
And so you had done, I think, what I took away even from that, from 2 years ago when we talked, you laid the foundation before even, a lot of people will write the book, and then, get it all together, hit publish, and then they say, okay, now what?
Great. Yeah.
Why am I not selling any books here? And I think I did that to some degree. You had a really good sense though, at that time of building your platform even before you hit that publish button. And can you tell us, I guess, a little bit about how did that framework come to you? How did you know to do that instead of making the rookie author mistake of just hitting publish and then wondering why you've sold 10 books?
Sure. I am a chronic researcher. I always like to research things as much as possible before I really make leaps, right? And so I always like to kind of have a framework and an understanding, which is funny because that's not how I started writing books. Like I started plotting things later, right? as I got smarter about my process, right? But I'm so used to like plotting things out and seeing how it can go and seeing the different directions it can go and trying to narrow down what the right way and what the best path or most effective path will be. And so I did a ton of research. And one of the things that just kind of kept coming back was I didn't have a platform of any kind. And it was like, okay, so how am I going to expect anybody to buy books if nobody knows who the heck I am, right? And so that's really what it came down to, was this fundamental understanding of nobody knows who this guy is. And why would they buy a book from me if they have no idea who I am?
Yeah, fair enough. So fast forward 2 to 3 years from probably your, 3, maybe even 4 years since you probably posted your first TikTok about, fantasy books that were not your own, which I know was a big part of your strategy back then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So fast forward, 2 years from that first interview we did, and you're in a very different place now. Can you talk about what has happened, because I remember there was still, that bit of fear in your eyes when you're talking about the 5,000 on your credit card, that was maxed out, 2 years ago. to where you are now, and you're talking about how nobody knew who you was. I think who you were. I think everyone knows who you are now. You seem to be everywhere. So what's happened, I guess, in the last 2 years to kind of bring you from when you released, let's say, Stone and Sky first came out to now?
If you're an author, and if you're listening to this episode, I'm assuming that you either are or you're aspiring to be, then at some point you're going to be dealing with multiple currencies. Maybe you're in the US and you get paid from Amazon UK in pounds. Or maybe you live outside the US, you get paid in US dollars from Amazon or other retailers, and you also have to pay in US dollars for things like cover design, edits, and a variety of services. So you're having to exchange your money both coming in and going out. And what's annoying is that it's not just exchange rates that are being inflated on both sides. Banks are also adding fees, up to 3% per transaction. Even if you're not making a lot of money from your author career just yet, those inflated exchange rates and those extra fees, they really start to add up. That's where today's sponsor, Wise, comes in. Wise is a service built specifically for people who deal with international transactions. Instead of padded exchange rates, they use the real mid-market rate, and they only charge a minimal upfront fee. With Wise, you can send international transfers to 80 plus countries. You can open a free multi-currency account where you can hold, convert, and spend over 50 different currencies. If you're a friend of the show, you can get a free international transfer for up to 800 Canadian dollars, which works out to about $550 US at the time of this recording. Just click the link in the description or head over to www.pintandportal.com/deals. You can sign up, help support the show, and get the deal.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I learned that, okay, people have to know who I am. Otherwise they won't buy books from me. Why? Because there's no connection there. They're like, okay, who cares? Right. Who is this guy? However, over time, I continued to flywheel that process, right? I continued to fine tune the process and go, okay, well, how do I write books better? Okay. How do I be more efficient and effective when I'm writing my books? So that process kind of evolved over the span of a few books. And, then I decided once I had that series done that I'm going to go hard. I'm going to get that, fast release series done. And I did. And it was crazy. I published 4 books in like 9 months. It was insane.
Real man.
Yeah, it was insane. And then the 5th book after that was 9 months after that. So I published 4 books in 9 months, and then I published no books for 9 months because it was like, okay, all right, well, we've done the fast process. Let's reevaluate this and take it to the next level. And how do we do that? Let's get this next one right and just do it different. And that's when we really started getting into doing Kickstarters prior to the release of books, which really kind of changed the game for us, for sure, financially as well, and just being able to perpetuate things forward. And the cool thing is you mentioned that, like, everybody knows who I am. Not everybody knows who I am, but it happens a lot more often now. Like, I went to a high school to do a author school visit just yesterday, and some of the students knew who I was, which is so cool. Like, the really bookish students knew who I was, right? Which is really cool. And knowing that I'm kind of in that space where even they would know who I was. And so all of that has been a flywheel effect as I continued to build upon the foundation that was already set and done. My bad on the mic.
Okay. No, and that's one thing that I really picked up on with how you have kind of built your brand and your presence up, because you've kind of done these layers. I mean, I think when you first came on, you were talking about TikTok, and then we were talking about the experience of the reader, and we've talked about Kickstarter, and you're doing a lot of conferences, and now you're doing, I know you're partnered with Kindlepreneur, and you're doing a lot of conventions. So you're stacking these things on top of one another in order to build kind of your full experience.
Right.
And so what I wanted to ask you a little bit about is, how intentional has it been as you've developed yourself as the brand rather than building your books as the brand? Because your books are a brand, but I think, you've really promoted, Diamanti as the brand rather than necessarily Stone and Sky or Garden the Garden, which I guess, first of all, how intentional was that, and how do you weave that into your decision making as you're working through your process?
Yeah, I mean, that's been a huge part of my growth, is being able to utilize the skills that I had prior to endeavoring on this journey, right, as an author. And I have a lot of background in speaking and public speaking, and being on a stage and being able to talk to crowds, right? And so understanding that I have that skill and that ability, because not everybody does, and as authors, we have to understand which skills are the ones that we can bank on and that we can build upon, and which ones that we really need to, okay, that's not my best skill. This is where I'm going to need help. And I get help. I work with all sorts of people now because I need help in all sorts of different areas that I'm not good at. And so understanding that I am good at public speaking, I am good at going on the stage and speaking in front of crowds, which a lot of people aren't comfortable with, means that, okay, this is an area of space that I need to really focus on. And because I am good at speaking, it lends itself well to making videos where my face is on them, even if that's not my favorite thing in the world to do. But it does, that skill set does lend itself well to the making of videos with faces on it. So it definitely has been something that's been intentional through the process, because even my first video that I ever posted on TikTok was a video of me, just doing something goofy and waving on the screen, right? Super goofy, but at the same time, it was just a way for people to get to know who I was a little bit. And there is a difference between a personal brand and a product brand, right? And you want to be on both sides as an author, but which one you lean into more is definitely going to depend on your skill set, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, jumping on TikTok, your first video, that is something that probably has just scared away half of our listeners. And so they don't stop listening right now. What do you say to an author or someone who's maybe writing their first book, or they've written maybe a few and they're trying to figure out how to, build their own platform, but they're terrified, or they really are just not comfortable getting on camera and talking and saying their thing? How does someone like that build a platform for themselves?
Yeah. I just had an article go up on BookBubbery today, one or the other, where I was talking about TikTok and this kind of thing, how to build on TikTok for an author and how to be able to sell books on TikTok as an author. And one of the things that I always remind people when I'm talking about this is you don't have to show your face. I did, because it was a skill and something that I could build off of for me. But other people, I knew, okay, if I show my face and I continue to talk on the screens and all these other things, other opportunities where I can go and speak at conferences and other things like that will arise, because people know, they see the proof, they see that you can handle yourself in front of an audience and those kinds of things. However, that isn't necessarily the road that a lot of people will go. And there are a lot of very successful social media accounts that are legitimately faceless accounts. And a lot, guys. I mean, get in the bookish community for, even a few days, and you're going to see on Instagram, on Book Talk and Bookstagram, on all of them, there are tons of faceless accounts that are doing very, very well. And they're just posting about books that they like. And you know what? People get to know you because they go, I also like those books. And guess what? There's a connection there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you know what? It took me way too long to get on TikTok because of that. I wouldn't say scared. I kind of gave myself not even imposter syndrome. I was like, I'm too old for TikTok. That's right.
Right.
Adults doing viral dances. I'm not I'm not going to do that because that's all I knew about it. And I didn't take the time to really learn about what authors were doing with it.
Yeah.
And then, when I saw, I was Adam Beswick's account and how he was doing, and I looked at his account and he's just doing he wasn't talking. He had his face, but he was doing words over, the text over top.
Yeah.
I can do that, right? Because I wasn't.
Yeah, exactly.
I had no problem showing my face, but at that point in time, which sounds silly because I'm doing a podcast now.
Yeah.
I want to talk about my books.
Sure.
It wasn't what I wanted to do, but I can write, right? I can write stuff over my face. That's not a problem. So that's still what not that my TikTok account is, it's not like I have hundreds of thousands of followers, but it does sell books for me. So,
right. And at the end of the day, isn't that what the social media is for? It's a tool for us to sell books.
Yeah. And I think to your point, though, you're not using it just to sell books. You're using it to connect to people who would be interested in your books.
Exactly.
Those connections with them. And so I think that I have two questions, I guess, surrounding that. First, do you still think that TikTok is an avenue that's worth pursuing for authors? Because I know that things have shifted there. Do you think that it still has the appeal and the draw that it did, let's say, even a year ago?
Yeah, even a couple of years ago when it was just insanity. And honestly, I think it does regardless, because I think about it this way. There are pools, right? So if we're talking about TikTok, people who like to use TikTok, guess what they're going to use? They're going to use TikTok. They're going to scroll on TikTok. If people like to use Instagram, guess where they're going to go to be part of the bookish community? Bookstagram on Instagram, right? They're going to use the app that they like to use. That's just the facts. And you will. Sure, of course, you're going to get crossover from app to app. But the fact of the matter is, most people will use one or the other over the other one, right? They will just use that one a majority of the time. And that's fine. So what I do is I have changed my framework to understand that each one of them is just a different pool of people. This is just a different pool for me to cast the net and bring in more fishies to come and hang out with me, right? And thus, everything that I post, all my shorts, whenever I make a video, a short video, it goes to TikTok, it goes to Instagram, and it goes to YouTube. Yes, it goes to YouTube. And in fact, sometimes it goes to some of these other ones like Twitter and Threads and all that stuff. And it goes to Facebook too, of course. So I cross-post everything. Why? Because they're all different pools of people, right? And it's the same way with like Kickstarter, where you will get people who will only pre-order your book on Amazon. That's the only place they're going to pre-order it. However, you will also get people who will pre-order your book on your website. And you will also get people who will pre-order your book on Kickstarter. It's all different pools of people.
We'll talk about Kickstarter in a bit, because I think that's a separate conversation.
Yeah, it's a whole beast, but
that people kind of stick to their own channels, and we don't realize that as authors, because I think we're trying to be everything to everybody. And you're like, well, if I post, people are going to see the same thing on Instagram as they see on TikTok. So why would I post it to both places? But you're right. It's not the same audience and even if the same people are on all platforms, they don't see everything you post, right?
Agreed.
So they might see one post on TikTok and they might see one on Threads, and they might see one on YouTube, and they're like, this guy's everywhere.
Exactly.
It's the repeated content, right?
You got it. Exactly. I mean, sometimes you'll get somebody who will comment on one video and it's the same video on a different one, and they'll comment again. And you're like, okay, great. Like, that's wonderful. But that's not the
engagement, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't hurt.
What does your schedule look like for creating your posts? Do you have a set of posts that you batch create them, a week ahead of time? Do you kind of create them at a certain time in the morning? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So that's really evolved over time. Now I have somebody who comes over and films with me, and he takes all the footage back and he goes and edits and gets everything scheduled out and ready to post. That's even a recent thing for me. And so that's been like only the last month. And so like this is still a new process.
It used to evolve, right?
Continuing to evolve as you go along, and always reevaluating everything and understanding, okay, this works great and it's continuing to work great. But what's the broken part? I make video. I go and I record 70 videos, and then I only edit half of them and put them on. And then even half of those get posted because I'm so doggone busy. Okay, how do we fix that problem? We get somebody to come and actually record the videos with me. They take them back, edit them, get them scheduled to post, and we're ready to go. And so it's always reevaluating the process and seeing what's working great, what's broken, and shifting to fix the things that are broken, right? Before, however, though, when I was getting started, you have to go all in and do the things yourself, right? Like, you just have to, because you can't afford to bring somebody on. And again, I couldn't up until like recently, right? So up to that point, it was me recording the videos, taking a stack of shirts like this and putting them on the chair over there and turning on all the lights and making 3 videos and changing a shirt, making 3 more videos, changing the shirt, and doing that, and then getting them all mixed in as I edited them, right? And then, so basically I would just record a whole bunch, and then I would edit the day of posting instead of having to go and record everything on the day that I was posting, which just was mania. Couldn't keep up with it. And so in order to keep things going and keep them stronger, what did I do? I said, okay, this isn't working. I can't make videos every single day. I got kids. I got all these other responsibilities. I can't make videos on the fly all the time. How can we fix this? Okay, let's make a whole bunch of videos on Saturday, and then I've got a bunch of footage that I can work through editing before I post, no problem. Because guess what? Your lighting has to be right. Everything else has to be, okay, I can't edit or I can't film a video in the dead of night or right before I go to bed. No, that's a perfect time to edit a video though. Boom, done, right? I can't make a video while my wife wants to watch a show, and spend some time with me in the evening, but I could sit there while we're watching a show and edit a quick video, right? So it's figuring out which parts of the process have to get better as you go.
Yeah, the number of videos that I've edited and posted while we're, so we don't have kids. So I'll preface that by saying we don't have family dinner time. We eat supper on the, the one show a day I'll watch is while we're eating. So that's just our,
sure.
What we do in the evening. So, I eat supper and then I'll quickly, post something that I had created earlier in the day, right? And
perfect. Yeah.
And it's a good, I have an extra 5 minutes here to do it. So what, holding things back to, I guess, your brand. So like you've got all this content created, you have, now you're able to have someone posting for you, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, we know
I've almost cried a few times. I'm not going to lie to you. There's been a couple of times where posts have gone up and I'm like, oh yeah. Oh, thank God. This is so great. And we're still retooling and figuring out our process now that, there's a collaborative effort here on this. But, up until that point, yes, it has been a do your own thing, right?
Yeah. No, and that's fantastic. So you've had it like I feel like a phenomenal avalanche of things. I mean, like I just want to mention you casually tossed in I have an article going up for BookBub.
Oh yeah.
Which is amazing in and of itself. You've had, I know you do videos with Kindlepreneur. You're doing, these different content pieces for different channels. So what I guess want to dig into just a bit is you have all these pieces of your author brand that you're putting out there. How do you decide? Like, did BookBub reach out to you? Did you reach out to them that you wanted to do something? How do you decide who to reach out to and what's going to be worth your time as you try to get your name out there as, into as many avenues as you're able to?
Yeah. So I will say, like, Kindlepreneur, they reached out to me. BookBub reached out to me. It's because I was building something and I was showing that I can handle an audience, and by handle an audience, I mean treat an audience with respect and dignity, and teach and share and be generous with my efforts, right? And when you get other companies like Kindlepreneur, who does a lot of teaching videos, what did they see? They saw, hey, you know what? We've been looking for somebody who might be able to do this, and we think you might be a great fit. Would you, let's have a talk. Okay, yeah, let's do that. And these are the things that you kind of are building. You don't necessarily know some of these avenues and doors are going to open, but they will open as you lean into the skill that you have, like the skill set that you have, and start connecting with people around you, right? So this past year, we did an anthology with 22 authors. Mr. Herman Sturnagel makes an appearance, which is fantastic. It was phenomenal. It's a phenomenal anthology, but this is part of the being generous with what I have and my skills, and knowing what I have and being able to connect with other people to do something great, right? And when you do great things, what happens? People take notice. And people go, oh, hey, you're really good at this. Like, hey, you're really good at that. Would you want to be a part of this? And you go, actually, let me think on that. Always answer with, let me take that and I will get back to you. Always start with that. It doesn't matter how exciting it is. Definitely take a moment to think about it, right? And then come back with, hey, I think this would work. And so for me, I always have a sounding board. My wife, Brittany, she's also one of the editors for the anthology that we did. And so she's even starting to get really connected into the community as well. And she's my sounding board. So when I get something, I go, hey, let's look at this. What do you think this could look like? And remember, I like to research and I like to follow the threads and see what could happen if we do this. What could happen if we do this? And would this take away from what I'm actually building? And that is always the determining question. Will this take away from what I'm actually building? And if it is, then it's probably not the right choice.
I love that question. And I also appreciate, because I believe you've said it in the past, and I forget if it was on our live, we did a Kickstarter live video at one point, but I know that you've said that your wife is sometimes the one who will pull you back from that level of excitement because you get,
yes.
And I mean, it's easy to get excited when someone like BookBub or Kindlepreneur that has a recognized name approaches you and says, hey, do you want to do this thing? The immediate reaction in your head is going to be, heck yes, I do.
Okay, yeah, wow, yeah, of course.
Yeah, but so I do feel like what you're getting at there, though, with, is this decision something that's going to take me where I want to go? I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into that.
Sure.
What does that look like for you? And how do you rein back some of those things that maybe aren't going to get you, like, maybe sound really cool, but isn't really going to bring you closer to where you want to be?
Yeah. So what that really comes down to is vision. And I think we often don't talk about vision enough in the authoring community, in the indie author community. Our vision is usually short-sighted, to be honest. And I know that I hope it doesn't sound mean, guys. What I'm trying to say is we are being too short-sighted, and we need to have bigger goals and bigger aspirations, because often what happens is, as writers and creatives, we just want to publish. We're so excited about that. But at the end of the day, once we hit that publish button, if we've not built anything, if we've built no foundation, if we have built no social media, no platform, no nothing, and we hit that publish button and we sell less than 3 copies and our mom didn't even buy a copy, what is that going to feel like? That's going to feel like a defeat. Even though you've accomplished something really quite wonderful and beautiful, you actually finished writing a book, okay? And not only did you write the book, but you did go and publish it, which is pretty cool. So what I'm trying to get at is often our vision as indie authors is too short-sighted. We don't think about where will this take us in the long run. And we often try to play the fast game, which is, I know that sounds weird coming from the guy who was like, I'm not going the trad route because I don't have enough time for that. But in fairness, I had also quit my job and I had to feed some children. So there was a very different mentality shift there where I was like, okay, no, I actually have to sell books like now. But even then, even at that point, I waited a year. My book did not publish for a whole year, which meant I was putting forth the effort and all the work into setting it up for a bigger, longer term vision, a vision that is filled with legacy, a vision that is filled with multiples of books, not just one book, right? And a vision that's filled with an author career, which requires selling books, right?
Yes.
Often I think in the indie space, we have a lot of us will be so encouraging about publishing a book, but we need to be a little more challenging to each other sometimes and be like, okay, that's great, but where is that going to take you? What is that going to lead to? And what is your actual vision? Because your vision is going to be slightly different than my vision. And somebody else as an author, they are going to have a specific vision. And if your vision is to write one book and publish one book, then great, go after that. But if you want a long-term author career, then you definitely have to look at your vision, reevaluate your vision, and what is the through thread that is going to carry you all the way to the end of the line. And if all the things that come along the way as opportunities don't match that through thread that takes you all the way, then it's not worth your time.
I wish that was something that I was told and or understood when I had written my first book. Because I did the same thing that you had done without the first piece. I wrote my first 3 books in a span of they were published within, I think, a year. I think it was 13 months from, I had book 1 to book 3 published.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that foundation. I had a bunch of sales on my first book from all the people that I've ever met in my life.
To
buy my first book.
Right.
And then I sold no copies of the second book because they, it wasn't their genre, which is fine. And no hard feelings, right?
They're not your target audience.
Just, my mother-in-law bought a copy of the book and she's not the type of person that reads dystopian sci-fi.
Right, exactly. Your mom might not be your target audience, just for the record. Right. My mom isn't either, if that makes you feel better, everybody. Yeah.
But I, and to be fair, when I started, I just wanted to write a book. I just wanted to, it was something that was on my bucket list to do, that I just wanted to see if I could do it. And then once I knew that I could, then I wanted to do something with it.
Totally.
Take it farther, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I had to fall a lot before I got to the point where I am now starting to get to the point where I'm coagulating my vision to, to do what you've done, just, what you started doing, which is fantastic. And I think that's what that's what I wish I had been told, because especially at that time, what we were being told, what was being kind of evangelized in the author space was you had to publish quickly. You just get the next
rapid release.
It's just rapid release. And some people did it intrinsically, like they had this innate, either from a business background, they knew that they needed a cohesive body of work and a brand to make rapid releasing sustainable and a viable model.
Mm-hmm.
And other people just took that message and were like, well, I just need to write a lot of books and that's just all I need to do. And without that foundation, a lot of books is just a lot of books if nobody knows you exist.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Why would people care to buy my books if they don't even know who I am?
Yeah. And that's, writing a book is easy compared to getting people that know you exist. That's the difficult part.
Right? For sure.
Book in front of the right people is the hard part.
And there's so many avenues and there's so many ways to do it. And that's the thing. It's creating this big machine that
it gets you in front of the right people, right? And that's, between the friends that you make along the way as indie authors, and you're sharing each other's books and newsletters and all the other things, right? And social media, and even learning ads, doing Facebook ads, or even doing like Kindle and Amazon ads. All of these things are part of the big machine that helps to continue to get you and your product in front of people, right? And it's not, again, it doesn't have to, you don't have to be a face brand. But when somebody reads your book, when somebody does come to your book, they're going to know, okay, this is a ZS Diamanti book. And when they know that, they go, okay, now I want the next one. And then when they get that one and it has the same through thread, and they know exactly what your product has to bring and what your product is going to give them, gives them this feeling. They're going to feel, for me, it's they're going to have a really fun time reading. They're going to end up with hope at the end of the day and be encouraged when they're done with the books, right? That's what they're going to get from a ZS Diamanti book. That's the brand side, right? The product's brand side versus the face brand side, and being able to use both to make the big machine. That's what I've used.
Yeah.
Right?
So I have a question about that, because the question formed in my head. Well, what about an author who wants to write, dystopian sci-fi and cozy fantasy and not have pen names? How do they make that work? And then I realized you have done that, because you also have a horror book out. So how do you work that product thread into something like horror when the base of your brand is family fun, cozy fantasy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a great question. And I'm still actually trying to do that right myself. But I can tell you that when I wrote it, I held by some of the same things that I always held by. The gore is very subdued. I don't actually prefer gore in my horror anyways. I prefer much more environmental and atmospheric horror is my favorite kind of horror. And so that's what I leaned into, right? I held fast to I don't have a bunch of swear words and stuff in my books. And guess what? I didn't do that either. And obviously horror is a little bit of a different beast in that it kind of ends with a little bit of intrigue and, oh my gosh, like leaving you feeling with a little bit of unease, because that's the nature of the genre. But I still weaved in some of those other things throughout the horror book, right? And so even though it's a different genre that is very dichotomized from the other ones, it is still a ZS Diamanti book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so people understand what they're going to get, right?
Yeah. So you're not going to have, a 12-year-old who loved Stone and Sky and sees your horror book in the library, pick it up and think, oh, why is there so much swearing and
right, exactly.
It's still, even though it's a different genre and they might not like it in the same way, it's still within what your reader expectations have been set as.
Correct. And setting up reader expectations is part of building your product brand.
Yeah. So one more question about author brand. As we're getting into an age of AI and AI generated products and AI generated posts and all this sort of thing, how do you feel like having a brand that's represented by your face, do you feel like that's more important now than maybe it was a few years ago? Or do you think that might not necessarily be the case as long as it's consistent?
That's a great question. And I hadn't really considered that actually because of the nature of how I have kind of a little bit, I work on both sides, right? Doing product brand things on, I have multiple social media accounts. Some are literally page flips with words on them, and then it shows my front cover and moving on, right? And that is a type of social media post, right? That has no face, right? Obviously, that would be a faceless, account, right? But also, yes, of course, I do have both sides. So that's kind of an interesting question, because I don't know that it's
maybe more important than it used to be. But I think you do have to be smart about what you are putting out there, because I try to, I always try to stay above reproach, right? Being at the spot where nobody can even question you, and you're like, you don't get yourself in a situation where people might think that you were doing something wrong. I'm always trying to stay in that space, right? Where it's like, everybody makes mistakes. Of course, everybody makes mistakes. But if you get yourself if you're trying to build yourself a space where people can't really question it, they're like, nah, he's a good guy. He's trying to do his best. He's doing his best out there, trying to share really fun books with people. I mean, nobody's going to give you a hard time for that. And I think even if you have faceless accounts, it's pretty obvious. I think AI is getting better at making it less obvious and trickier for sure. There's been a couple of times where I was like, what the heck? And I couldn't even believe my brain. My brain was like, how did that happen? And then my son was like, dude, that's AI. And I was like, what? It's gotten that good? I don't know.
We're getting to that age, aren't we? Where we are the ones who are can't tell.
Might get fooled or all. Yeah, it's just, I'm not sure. So I try to stay clear as much as possible. And if that's, I understand that for some authors, they don't care about that. And I do care about it. So I do try to stick clear. Other authors that don't care about it, they don't mind getting some AI images for their ads or whatever. And I've seen that a lot. And I've seen that be very successful for some authors. I prefer not to, just because I don't want that question, right? To even arise in people's minds. And so I steer clear from it, but I don't know that it's necessarily more important for you to have a face, a personal brand, because of that, if that makes sense.
Like one thing, I asked because one thing that I've kind of been mulling over as I look at my own brand is how much genuine human interaction is going to be more valued as we see more and more AI slop on the
Totally.
Whereas at some point, in my mind, readers are going to want that connection with the author, know the human behind the writing, right? So that's
totally.
That's kind of where my question stems from is it more important, or is it potentially going to be more important to the reader to know who the human is behind the books? And if I'm not willing to have my face on my social media, maybe that doesn't talking to the camera necessarily. Maybe it's just me posting more selfies, which I know everyone wants more of my selfies. I get comments all the time about, Herman posts another selfie again, because that is what my social media typically is. Even my videos are just selfies, and that's fine. But so maybe it's not talking to the camera, but I just wonder, and I'm not necessarily expecting an answer, but just wondering if that is going to be something that is more valued to readers, in the coming years.
Well, and often when things get oversaturated, what happens is people are looking for the change, right? For example, Marvel Studios had a gajillion different, movies, and they had TV show spin-offs on every other channel and streaming platform, and it wasn't sustainable. Why? Because it was oversaturated, and so people started looking elsewhere for something else, because it was oversaturated. And if the trend continues and more AI content is posted in the social media spheres and everywhere else, they are going to look for something more genuine. And when they see your book page flip with your not great lighting, which is what mine is, they're going to be like, okay, well, that's real, obviously. AI would have made that look way better, right? And so those genuine posts are going to, I think you might be right. I think whenever something becomes oversaturated, what happens? People look for the different thing. It's kind of like Grimdark. Grimdark was crazy popular. Grimdark fantasy was crazy popular. But after a while, everybody's like, man, kind of tired of all this grim, gritty, like depressing kind of fantasy. I kind of want something a little more special, like little different. And what's happening? We're getting heroic fantasy, and we're getting heroic fantasy, and we're getting heroic fantasy, and we're getting cozy fantasy really breaking out, right? Because people were looking for something a little different, right? So, yeah,
100%. So when it comes to what your focus is now on your marketing activities, what are your main buckets? Because I know you've got different, you talked about ads, you've talked about speaking, you've talked about all these different things. What are your kind of main buckets right now that you consider your pillars of what you're doing to promote your books?
Yeah. So this year we're actually making a little bit of a shift, and like I said, every time we always are reevaluating, and I've got a great sounding board. Brittany is an awesome sounding board, and we always talk about it and go, okay, what is the thing that we can improve this year that will actually kind of, even if it makes a shift, is it going to do what it's supposed to do on this through thread long-term goal, right? And so this year, I like this question because I do have all the little buckets, right? I got the social media bucket, I got the newsletter bucket, I got the ads bucket, all these different places that you're trying to find new readers, right? And market, right? And including Kickstarter, which is another, it's another big pool. And each time we continue to grow the Kickstarters because we understand that it's a whole pool in of itself, right? But the big shift bucket this year is actually doing more reader-focused events rather than author events. And so in the past, I've done a lot of authoring events where I go to author conferences, and a lot of times I'm speaking to authors, and this might be where part of that, like, everybody knows Zach comes from, because in the author community, I have been kind of bouncing around and traveling around a lot over the last couple of years. And so this year we're making a very concerted effort to incorporate a lot more reader specific events so that we can be out there amongst the readers and meeting people who are big fans and people who are brand new, right? And this is just another area that brings, it's all different streams, right? All different buckets. And this one has been the one that's been a little bit neglected. So let's go and fix that one. And how do we do that? Okay, let's make sure that we're planning out the events long enough in advance so that we have them on the calendar. We've got everything sorted out. And being very intentional about managing those and managing the travel and the costs and all those things, because that's been the bucket that needed the most attention. And so that's where focus has to shift, right?
Okay. So obviously, as I think any aspiring author who has tried their hand at marketing knows, you can get really overwhelmed really fast because you're trying to do all of the things. So you're focusing on the reader market this year. You're taking away from maybe the author events or another part of your pie, so to speak, that you're able to focus your attention more on that piece of it?
Yeah, certainly. You've got to make choices, right? You have to make choices to prioritize. And so at the end of the day, if there is an author event that I'm invited to speak at, and there's a reader event that I'm invited to attend, you have to make that choice. Okay, does this author event really hit home the vision of what we're trying to do this year? Or does this reader event really hit home the vision of what we're trying to do this year? And right now, this year, most of the time, the reader events are winning, right? Because that's the priority. We have to kind of shift priorities for that so that it actually works properly. And unfortunately, hey, at the end of the day, you got to make choices. You can't do everything. It's not going to work, right? And so once you have certain things set up, though, and like I said, we've got a new social media guy coming in, and he's helping me, and we're starting to get a rhythm going there. That's kind of getting shored up, so I don't have to say no to other things in order to keep this thing alive, right? And those things change and shift as you grow.
Yeah, but it's all going back to what you were saying about the underlying vision. You're not just looking at, doing a bunch of reader cons would be fun. Let's do that. You've got your thread that you're running through your entire marketing plan.
That's it. Yeah.
You're ensuring aligns with that, those conferences align with that thread. And maybe there is an author con that might align better than a certain reader con. And maybe that's what you're going to
Totally. Yeah.
But you're bringing everything back to that baseline vision for where you're going.
Correct. And I think that might be the big takeaway for people listening on this one is maybe I need to go back and I need to sit down and I need to really write out my vision. What is this? What am I really trying to do here at the end of the day?
Yeah, I love it. I love that so much. I really do. Especially because, we are at the start of a new year. Even though, it's probably, it's going to be February by the time listeners hear this, but maybe they haven't nailed down their business plan for the year, or maybe they don't even have a business plan because they are just assuming they're writing books.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's where you're at. Maybe where, the listener is at is they're writing their first book and because this is what I did when I started. I started listening to all the podcasts.
Of course. Yeah.
Watching the videos on YouTube.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out.
Doing all your research. Yeah.
But I was so craft focused that I ignored the marketing piece. My aspiration was to get the book written, right? So
yeah.
So I absolutely love it, and I hope that is something that listeners take away. If they take away only one thing from today. Yeah, but I want to pivot a bit to one certain bucket because it's very relevant to what you have happening right now, and I want to talk about Kickstarter because, as you said, that has been one of your primary avenues and revenue streams for the past couple of years. You mentioned it a little bit when you were talking about kind of how things have shifted for you in the last couple of years, but talk to me about, I guess, first, what made you decide to use Kickstarter for your books? And I guess tell me about the first Kickstarter you ran.
Yeah.
And obviously, it was something that made you come back to it afterwards. So tell me about that first Kickstarter, why you approached it, and I guess what you took away from it once it had finished.
Yeah, sure. So the first one was a Kickstarter that I ran specifically because I wanted to fund audiobooks. And I came to the realization, okay, audio is so vitally important. And if anybody's listening and you guys don't have audiobooks, you have to understand the wave is overwhelming. Audiobook readers has grown year over year over year over year and continues to grow. It's the fastest growing of the mediums of ebook, physical, paperback, hardcover, those ones, print, and audio. It's the fastest growing of all of them. And so audiobook is so vitally important. Interestingly enough, I think this is partially because of the rise of social media and book talk and bookstagram influencers who are reading 140 books a year. How do you think they're doing that? They're not putting their eyes on every word of every book. It's not happening. It just does not happen. I've got a pretty good track record of, a good 50 books a year. Like, that's pretty good. But guess what? A bunch of them are audio because I don't have the actual time to sit down and put eyes on every word of every book. And they don't either. And so I think there's this huge rise in that because people see, oh my gosh, these influencers are reading 120 books a year. How can I even possibly keep up with that? And they realize, oh, audiobooks are amazing. And they really are. And they really are amazing. And so for me, I was wanting audiobooks and I wanted to produce them and I wanted to make sure they were going to be great quality because that's number one. If the quality is not good, people won't listen, right? And it's not going to work. And so that's what I wanted to do. That's why I ran the first Kickstarter. And it was a Kickstarter I ran for Stone and Sky, and Stone and Tide, the second book of the Stone and Sky series, was coming out in the middle of that Kickstarter. In fact, I guess that was exactly, 2 years ago, I guess? No? Oh my gosh. Anyway, That's a whole other thing. But that at that time, that was my goal. But I had to learn a hard lesson, knowing to find out that people on Kickstarter, what they are looking for is not to necessarily back a product to make it happen and great. What they are looking for is that something special that they can be a part of, and something special that they get to walk away with that basically nobody else does. And so for me, one of the things that I really started honing in was actually, I never do signed hardcovers. Can that be a special enough to carry a Kickstarter? And it worked for the first 2 Kickstarters, and they were nice and, they did what they needed to do. They did what I needed them to do. And they weren't like, it wasn't, you didn't walk away with a huge profit or anything like that. It was mostly funding what I needed to fund or back fund, right? And as we continued to grow from Kickstarter to Kickstarter, you recognize, okay, Kickstarter is its own ecosystem, its own pool of people and its own audience. And not all the people who are on my social medias are on Kickstarter or even care, but you still want to kind of get some of those people on there with you. But you're also kind of working in this other ecosystem that is Kickstarter, right? And people who love to use Kickstarter, guess what? That's where they probably do most of their spending. That's just how it works, right? And so when you start realizing that and shifting tracks, you go, oh, okay. So I'm really playing this different game over here with all the people who are on Kickstarter instead of playing this other game, right? And once you know the rules of the game, you can play it a little better, right? And so that's when things kind of shifted. Remember, I published 4 books in the span of 9 months. And then after that, I didn't publish another book until 9 months later. And that's because we made a real shift in the way that we were doing Kickstarters. And it was, okay, let's change the way the publishing schedule works, the publishing rotation works, and incorporate a Kickstarter in before a book is published rather than doing it after a book is published. And let's also up the ante and go big and go all out and do special editions at the same time so people can get special editions of a book that's not even out yet. And that is really when it started humming over on Kickstarter for sure.
Yeah. So that switch from basically something that was, here's a piece of something that I have that I would like to improve a little bit, help me out with that, to here's something that's special and exclusive was what tipped the audience or tipped the campaign for you.
Yeah, really started getting things humming, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And so was that, I guess, what else did you learn from, so now you have a Kickstarter that's going to be launching in a few days. How many Kickstarters, what number will that be? 5 or 6?
Yeah. So let's see. I've done 1, 2 with the first 2 were for the Sky series, the Stone and Sky series. And then I had the Garden and Wagons and Wyverns. So that would be 4. And then we did the Honor Anthology, which was a smashing success. So that was number 5. And then of course, Assassin in the Ale House. Look at this beauty, by the way.
That looks amazing.
Is that not gorgeous?
That is so cool.
But Assassin in the Ale House special edition will make number 6. And it's shaping up to maybe be the best one yet, which is super exciting because the last one we did was the Honor Anthology, and we had 22 authors really, hammering this thing and getting excited and hyping people around this thing. Whereas Assassin in the Ale House is me again by myself kind of deal, and it might even be even better than the Honor Anthology, which would be even crazy. Just mind-blowing, right? Which is kind of funny because the people listening or watching, however they're experiencing the podcast, they actually have the added benefit that you and I don't have, because this thing, the Assassin in the Ale House Kickstarter, launches on January 26th, so next Monday. Right. All right, for us, as we record this. For them, when they see it published, it's already live, and so they'll be seeing it in the middle and how it's actually going, which is pretty cool.
that is pretty cool. And if you are listening, let's say on Spotify or wherever you happen to listen to a podcast, do check out the video because Zach did hold up Assassins in the House. It looks pretty cool. And I have to say, you're going to be able to get these two as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. Look at those beauties.
I just got I got these in the mail a little while ago, and I have to say, so these are the first two books in his series, Garden the Garden and Wagons and Wyverns. I have to say, Zach, that opening up these books, I'm gonna use the market edition.
Do it.
I'm gonna pull that up here because
yeah, there he is.
because there's only one quote on the back of this book.
That's it.
It happens to be mine, which is awesome. I love it.
Your quote was just so good. And I remember Brittany and I going over all the quotes and going, okay, which one makes the most sense and is going to work just right? And she was like, put Herman's. And I was like, done.
That's so cool. I'm honored. It was the first quote I have that I know of on the back of a book. And I have another one on now from Liz Shipton's /magic. Say that one right. But this is the first one, so that is special to me. But these books do look cool. My own review on the back.
He's like, oh my gosh, I know it's over there.
The first ones, right? So I'm assuming that you'll be able to get, or backers will be able to get all three books.
Yeah, all three.
Too. And they are standalones. I'm
look how good they look together. Is that not awesome? Yeah, they look so good together.
I love it. So, can you share some details about Assassin of the Alehouse?
Yeah.
And what? Because I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but give us a little bit of details, and then I would like to know what. Actually, let's back up one step because we didn't get to the question I actually asked.
No.
Yes, way side railed my view. What have you learned now over the course of 6 Kickstarters? Like how is Kickstarter number 6 different from Kickstarter number 1, aside from the special edition? But what have you learned as far as how to structure a Kickstarter and how to approach Kickstarter as a separate marketplace from any other avenue that you use?
Yeah. Really focusing on making sure that everything is clear. Mine isn't very concise, I would say, because mine are always like this long Kickstarter thing, and I know there are some that are way more concise, and they just blow it out of the water and they do amazing, right? Mine's probably a little longer than it needs to be, but I try to make sure that any potential backers understand exactly what's happening, what they're getting, and what makes this special for them as backers. Those are the things that I really focus on when I'm setting up my Kickstarter, trying to make it as clear as possible, because if people don't have questions, they're way more likely to click, yes, let's do this game. Let's get in it, right? If they have questions, they're a lot more likely to, I'm not sure, and then leave the page and never come back, right? So
yeah, no, 100%. I feel like Kickstarter too, as opposed to some other platforms, has more tolerance for the longer, or maybe not even I shouldn't even say tolerance, preference for the longer story. Where, Amazon, someone wants to get in, read the first 2 sentences, and then they're out. I feel like because you're providing an experience rather than a product.
Right, exactly.
I feel like there's more of an appetite for way more description, way more detail.
Totally.
Way more of a story than, you still want to, I find you still want to include kind of that snippet at the top so they can get what
the snapshot. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But I feel like backers are way more likely to digest all of that information.
Totally. Because they're intrigued. They want to be a part of these things, and they do want to know what's special for them. So they go and they will look over it and see and find out what it is that they're going to get that's special.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell us about Assassin in the Alehouse
Yeah.
And just give us a snapshot. We're not, this, unlike the previous iteration of this podcast where it was about the books, I wanted this podcast to be about the author, but I still have to hear about this book.
Yes. Yeah. So Assassin in the Ale House is the third book in the Fables of Finlestia series, which is a series of standalone cozy fantasy books, which include Garden in the Garden and Wagons and Wyverns. And Assassin in the Ale House, I'm really excited about this one because I actually had a lot of fun writing this one. It was, I was on a little bit of a deadline that was a little hairy at times, but I actually had a lot of fun with this book. And I, from all the early readers, I've been hearing that it's a lot of fun. It's all about an assassin. He's a former assassin. He was the world's deadliest assassin before he went into hiding, and now he's been working at an ale house to be undercover until one day a warning is left at the ale house, which drags him back into the world of cloaks and daggers. And it is a cozy fantasy tale about finding the place that feels like home and the ones that make it so.
Lovely. That sounds amazing. And it sounds like such a unique premise for a cozy fantasy book. So I cannot wait to read the cozy fantasy about assassins, because I don't believe that I have read one of those yet.
I don't think I have either.
Yeah, that's so much fun. So Zach, I think that's a good place to end things, but I would like to know if you have one final parting thought for perhaps young Zach of 2 years ago, 3 years ago. What advice would you give to him now, knowing, everything you've learned in the last 2 or 3 years? What's, maybe one thing that has stuck out to you that you could say, hey, this is, something that you should or shouldn't be doing?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hey, write down the vision, make it firm, get it, put it on your mirror if that works, put it in somewhere in where you write, somewhere in where you do the authoring business so that you can see it. Keep it at the forefront of your mind and keep it strong and steady. And there are going to be a million different opportunities, a million ways that it could possibly go. But always come back to, does this serve the vision that I've set before myself? And follow that.
Beautiful. That ends the episode perfectly, I believe. So thank you so much for joining me today, Zach. This has been amazing. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I will make sure to link your Kickstarter and links to all of your books and social media in the show notes. So I forgot the word for show notes. It's been so long.
It's been a minute. Yeah. Hey, You know what? Thanks so much for having me again, bro. I'm so excited for this new venture, the new direction, right? The new vision for this podcast. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and you're going to have a great time with it. And I think listeners, you guys are in for a treat. So be ready.
Awesome. Thank you again. And we will chat soon.